It's my pleasure to introduce our next guest from Pear Therapeutics, President and Chief Executive Officer, Dr. Corey McCann. As a reminder to attendees, if you'd like to ask a question of our speaker, please type it into the question box under the video player. Corey, thanks so much for joining us today. And to start, could you provide a couple of minutes of introductory comments about Pear for investors new to the story?
Okay, it's great to see you, and thank you for having us. Thanks to everyone at Chardan, really for helping to spread the word about prescription digital therapeutics. As you mentioned, I'm the Chief Executive Officer of a company that's called Pear Therapeutics. We're a publicly traded company on NASDAQ under the ticker PEAR, and we're the leader in this new space called Prescription Digital Therapeutics, or PDTs. As you've probably heard throughout the day, PDTs are software-based therapeutics that are designed to directly treat a whole host of different disease conditions. They're products that are evaluated in randomized controlled trials and are authorized by regulators like the US FDA. And they're products that are ultimately, in a commercial sense, prescribed by clinicians and reimbursed by payers via traditional pharmacy and medical benefits. These are products that provide convenient treatment solutions for patients. Ultimately, they provide leverage to prescribing clinicians, and they provide the opportunity for cost savings to payers. Pear is really the leader in this space with the first 3 FDA-authorized prescription digital therapeutics. That's our Reset, Reset-O, and Summerist products for the treatment of substance use disorder, opiate use disorder, and chronic insomnia, respectively. Behind those products, we have the deepest and broadest pipeline in the space with our next 14 product candidates in different stages of development. And they all sit on what we believe is the first end-to-end platform to both create new PDTs as well as a software infrastructure to commercialize PDTs.
Well, great. So, Corey, Pear is the clear early leader in this emerging field. However, PDTs do represent relatively new and novel therapeutic approaches, requiring education of patients, prescribers, and payers about the distinct features, therapeutic benefits, cost savings, and other advantages of PDTs compared to alternative therapies to improve patient outcomes. Hence, we've emphasized to investors that FDA authorization is a necessary but not sufficient step towards having a commercially successful PDT. What do you believe are some of your first mover advantages helping you to successfully perform the heavy lifting to address these challenges?
Okay, I think the way that you phrase this, necessary but not sufficient, is I think that's a fair operator for investors. Maybe let's take a step back and take a look at where we are and where the space is currently. And so when we sort of think about the current state of the space, we've demonstrated that software can treat multiple disease conditions. We've demonstrated that we can generate compelling randomized clinical trial and real world data, that we can get labels from regulators like the US FDA. We've also demonstrated that patients and clinicians will utilize the products in the real world, that these products can generate cost savings in real world deployment, and that we can get payers to pay. So we've crested 30 million covered lives for our lead commercial products. To date, you've already seen some payers providing access on the state side, states like Massachusetts, Oklahoma, Indiana, Ohio, Kentucky, and Michigan. You've seen some large PBMs jump in like OptumRx and Prime Therapeutics. And then you've seen a whole host of different robust coverage mechanisms coming into place. I'm sure we'll talk about CPT codes for prescribers. I'm sure we'll talk about HCPCS codes, and we'll probably talk about our federal bill as well. So we really see the space as being ripe for expansion. And we think that we've set up the flywheel. You asked directly what enables us to expand. It's our flywheel. It's a relatively straightforward commercial flywheel. It's one where we generate commercial scripts, and those scripts allow us to generate more data and to ultimately improve our products. Those products and that data allows us to convert more payers, and then the conversion of those payers begets more prescribing. And so it's really that feed forward loop that we've demonstrated in principle and that we're now bringing to scale.
Well, great. So, establishment of widespread reimbursement is critical, and this will require additional real-world evidence beyond that necessary to obtain the 510(k) clearance. The company is certainly making good progress, as measured by the significant increase in covered lives. Help us understand the playbook that you're using and what you've learned along the way with respect to any quality thresholds that exist for real world evidence studies. Certainly you have the RCTs, and that's the highest level of evidence. You have that to get your authorization. How critical are those in the real world setting? And then, second, what are some of the minimum duration of benefits, whether that's 6, 9, 12 months or longer, that's critical to demonstrate? Let's start there.
Yeah, so Kay, I think if you think about our value proposition to payers, it's twofold. It's one, we have the ability to help payers access underserved and disenfranchised patient populations that they wouldn't otherwise be able to access. And then two, we have the opportunity to help payers save money. And I think with regard to the second point, really that plays incredibly nicely into the advantages of prescription digital therapeutics, in that these are not only therapeutic products, they're also data collecting products where we're able to collect these robust data sets within commercial patients. And I think you rightly pointed out sort of where we're headed and where it seems the space is headed, which is that for every single product, we're able to show engagement and patient-reported outcomes. We're able to also collect clinician inputted data. And lastly, and maybe most importantly, we're able to directly collect claims and outcomes data so that we can spell out a net dollar savings from patients who are able to utilize our products. Just as an example, we last put out what was 9-month data for Reset-O, and this data showed a durable treatment effect as well as a reduction in inpatient hospital utilization as well as emergency department visits. All of which culminated in more than a $2,700 per treated patient cost savings. And this is the type of data that we'll continue to put forth really for all of our products. We've publicly disclosed that we're working on 12-month data for Reset-O, that we're working on 6-month data for Reset, and also health economic data for Summerist. And so I think, in the short term, we're excited to be poised to have clinical trial data, real world usability data, and then real world HEOR data for all 3 of our commercial products. And we're excited to see this dossier of data grow, where with every commercial patient who utilizes the products, we're able to look in larger patient populations at different cuts of the data and for longer periods of time.
I think one of the key advantages of PDTs is the patient engagement data that you're able to capture. So when we think about the HEOR data that's important to payers, and you're able to provide that engagement data, how does that possibly help you beyond just, the realized cost savings that they're interested in making their coverage decisions?
So I think many a payer has been burned outside of the PDT arena. I think rates of engagement are notoriously low when it comes to traditional patient-facing software. And so I think that's really a lens that many payers view any piece of patient-facing software with. There's sort of an expectation that drop-off rates will be quite high. And if you're to look at things like a traditional app you would just download off the App Store, I mean, in some cases, you're seeing 10% of patients remaining after the first several days. So very high decay rates. I think we're able to, in our space, directly refute sort of those thoughts about software and show what is just the opposite, which is very high rates of patient engagement at the end of 12-week scripts, and then many patients going on for chronic use for multiple 12-week scripts. And in some cases, we're even able to go at risk on the basis of that engagement data in structuring some of our at-risk payer coverage contracts. So I think it really depends on the payer, whether they're most interested in engagement data or most interested in health economic data. Most payers seem to be interested in both. And in both cases, I think they really help for us to put forth the data that demonstrates that these products perform in the way that we say that they do.
Okay, great. Since announcing last November that Massachusetts became the first state to cover your PDTs for substance abuse, Reset and Reset-O, for all Medicaid patients, we've seen other states, you mentioned a few of those, quickly follow suit. Can you comment on how the nature of these types of discussions with other states are proceeding now that these initial agreements are in place?
Yeah, Kay, I mean, first and foremost, we believe that the cadence of these state market access events may be reflective of a tipping point where you bring together coverage mechanisms, health economic data, and patient and clinician advocacy, and they all come together to drive market access at scale. We've been engaging states in a number of different ways. In some cases, states will buy large blocks of scripts in bulk. Our work in Ohio is an example of that model. In other cases, states will cover our products via Medicaid and essentially either buy fee-for-service or managed care organizations bring us onto formulary. Massachusetts is a great example there. We're very much open for business and will continue to pursue both bulk and traditional coverage arrangements for our products, ultimately with the goal of making these products available to patients broadly. Please go ahead, Kay.
Well, we'll go ahead and finish that thought.
I was just about to say once again, I think this is a space that's all about momentum. And whereas this was something which was quite innovative when Massachusetts put us on formulary, we've now got this whole first class of states, Massachusetts, Oklahoma, Indiana, Ohio, Kentucky, Michigan, as well as some other work. And I think we're able to put forth a value prop to states that says that if you want to be a leader, it's time to keep up with these states who have now become vanguards in this new space.
Yeah, just in terms of innovation and, in terms of innovative payer pricing, reimbursement types of mechanisms, obviously value-based pricing agreements would come to the forefront. What is your view of those, given the breadth and depth of, again, your patient engagement data? You certainly would seem to not be afraid of those. And if it's a way to get broader coverage, that's the way that would certainly help your business. Give me your thoughts on value-based pricing agreements.
Yeah, okay. I mean, our goal is to make software a mainstream medical treatment. Everything we do runs through that North Star. And in the service of making software a mainstream disease treatment, we build products that perform in the real world as well as in clinical trials. And it's our goal to generate robust market access across different types of payers. So to that end, we view value-based pricing and value-based agreements as something which really will come part and parcel with this space. I think ultimately PDTs are going to be able to push value-based agreements forward as much as value-based agreements will be able to push PDTs forward. So we have the data. We go into these deals eyes wide open, knowing what performance looks like across large patient populations. And we're able to do deals that guarantee the payer results in line with what we've seen in other patient populations in ways that we feel quite good about. So that's a lot of words to say that, while I can't speak to very specific mechanisms of value-based agreement in individual contracts, what I can speak to is the notion that we have very much embraced value-based agreements. We're open for business, and we're more than happy to do them across a number of different customers.
Okay, great. Corey, again, as the clear leader here, you have actually provided forward revenue guidance for 2022 of 22 million, along with other performance metrics. Can you quickly walk through and define how, for a given number of written prescriptions, the fulfillment rate, the WAC price, the reimbursement rate, and any gross to net discount produce a reportable revenue amount?
Sure, happy to. And so what I might do first is just walk through how we go from functional metrics to revenue. And then second, we'll walk through different functional metrics and ultimately how we're able to push those metrics toward our $22 million target this year. So if you just think about a hypothetical scenario of 100 prescriptions written with a 50% fulfillment rate and a 50% payment rate, in this hypothetical scenario, Pear would have 100 top-line scripts written, 50 filled scripts, of which 25 of those are paid prescriptions. If you then calculate product revenue, that would be multiplying the 25 paid prescriptions by the wholesale acquisition cost, or WAC, for the respective prescriptions, and then reduced by any applicable discounts and or rebates if they're applicable. So in this particular scenario of the 100 top line scripts, you'd have 25 paid reset scripts at our $17.98 and 20-cent WAC, and that would generate $44,955 in revenue. That's before any applicable discounts and rebates. So that's the high level math. That's sort of how the numbers flow. If you then want to think about the different levers that we've been targeting as functional metrics in order to get to $22 million this year, you got three big ones that we talk about. So first, prescriptions, second, fulfillment rate, and then third, coverage. And so on the prescription side, we've given guidance of between 50 and 60,000 prescriptions. That's really heavily driven by scaling prescribing within currently prescribing clinics and health systems, as well as bringing a small number of new health system customers on board. Here, we've really been able to drive prescribing by making our product simpler to utilize, like, for example, by embedding into major EMRs, as well as via a set of CPT codes called RTM codes that provide reimbursement for clinicians who remotely monitor our patients using our products. And we'll talk about those, I'm sure, to come. On the fulfillment side, our 22 guidance is between 50 and 65% fulfillment rate. The way to think about this is really a host of incremental improvements in order to bring our fulfillment rate from the 51% that we announced in 2021 steadily upward. And so this is things as simple as converting many of our prescribers from fax-based prescriptions to prescribing directly within the EMR, as well as a number of other programs that we've enacted. Lastly, you have coverage. Here, our 2022 guidance is 100 to 120 million covered lives. And this is really a proxy for pay rate. So the more covered lives that we have, the higher the probability of us being reimbursed for a given script in the real world. And this is where we continue to push health economic data. This is where you've seen some of the large PBMs like Prime Therapeutics and Optum, as well as Massachusetts and Oklahoma Medicaid jump in. And this is where we've got a lot of our efforts focused on really bringing the products to the masses and making coverage a mainstream event. So I think if you roll all that together, our priorities for 2022 are pretty clear. Number one, it's hit this $22 million in revenue. Number two, it is drive major coverage events that really set the stage for 2022, 2023, and beyond. That all comes from number three, continuing to generate health economic data. And then fourth and fifth, it's all about adoption at major centers. And finally, pushing our pipeline forward.
Well, great. Thanks for that clarity. So, we are seeing progress on a number of reimbursement components. You talked about the increases in covered lives. We have the establishment of Category 1 RTM CPT codes for physicians. Some went into effect this year. The CPT is going to effect in 2023. And most recently, the establishment by CMS of a new Level 2 HCPC code to describe prescription digital behavioral therapy. That went into effect April 1st. Which of these is most likely to have an immediate impact on your 2022 revenue guidance?
Yeah, okay. I think first, it's incredibly exciting to see these different structural milestones come to pass, not just for Pear, but for the whole space. And if we want to look at CPT codes and HCPCS codes individually, so on the CPT codes, we anticipate that these codes will support physician payment for utilizing our Pear.MD backend. And that's both to track therapy outcomes as well as education and setup on the therapeutic. There are essentially three separate subcodes. One is for setup and education on patient use of the equipment. Two is for monitoring service, the first 20 minutes. And then three is for subsequent 20-minute increments of monitoring via the backend dashboard. So this is an incredibly exciting time because this is really the first time that a prescriber could receive payment for setup and education of a patient on Reset, Reset-O, and Summerist. And we think that this is sort of a fundamental driver of script volumes going forward. Then on the other hand, you have the HCPCS codes that were granted by CMS. And really what we see out there is that many payers are providing coverage for PDTs via the pharmacy benefit. Now what we're able to do is offer what we would call benefit type optionality, where for payers who aren't able to pay for PDTs via a pharmacy benefit, they're now able to do so via a medical benefit. And this is really consistent with our strategy to meet payers where they are, when they are, and match benefit type to applicable payer. You might note that this is a strategy that's been used successfully for medical devices that are dual listed, things like continuous glucometers. So, both of these are important milestones for our revenue trajectory. You can think about CPT as being more meaningful for script volume and HCPCS as being more meaningful for covered lives. I think really the big lever in 22 to hit our top line revenue targets is really increasing the fraction of scripts that translate into paid scripts. Said differently, increasing the fraction of covered scripts. And so by that guidance, you can think about the HCPCS code as perhaps being more meaningful toward that end.
Great. Well, I want to talk about Summerist. We just talked about 2022, at least in our modeling, that's basically mostly coming from Reset, Reset-O. We have Summerist in our modeling really starting to kick in 23. But we think this is a product that has a huge potential. It's certainly a product that's been well studied, 29 studies to date. CBT for insomnia is already in the treatment guidelines as first line. And as I said, it's a large addressable market. What additional reimbursement components do you want to see in place before you commence a more aggressive marketing effort for this product?
Yeah, and I think we absolutely remain bullish on the product and also the opportunity where Summerist can be a first-line drug-free treatment for the more than 30 million Americans with chronic insomnia. We believe that the randomized clinical trial data speaks for itself, as well as the unmet medical need. If you think about what we believe it takes for products to be successful in this space, it's again, for every single commercial product having registration studies that demonstrate safety and effectiveness. I think we've done that for Summerist. It's about having real world demonstrations of patient engagement and clinical outcomes. We are in the process of doing that for Summerist. We announced, for example, our DREAM study, which is a remote real world study for health economic outcomes as well as disease outcomes in the real world. And then lastly, it's about having health economic assessments that show the overall impact on healthcare spending. And that's a place where we've made public that we are continuing to do work for Summerist. We have health economic studies that are in the works. And just like for Reset-O, I think when you're able to bring those three things together, that makes for a compelling discussion with payers. And that really then allows us to put our foot on the gas and push both script volume as well as payer coverage on the back end of having announced that health economic data, which is specific to Summerist.
Great. Corey, we know you have really two kind of major components to the business: Pear Create, which is your design platform, and then Pear Connect, which is your commercial platform, and includes your digital specialty pharmacy and patient service center. You recently announced a new collaboration with Epic that represents an initial step towards integrating the Pear Connect platform within Epic's leading EHR platform to remotely monitor patients who've been prescribed your PDTs. Can you talk about the importance of this agreement?
Yeah, happy to. And I think, again, let's start with our North Star, which is that it is Pear's mission to make software a mainstream disease treatment. We continue to believe that PDTs can treat most medical conditions. And we believe that the leader in this space will ultimately be the most prolific creator of PDTs that are of the highest quality, that all ultimately roll up to the same shared infrastructure. And we've disclosed that we have this dual platform. We have Pear Create, which allows us to build PDT after PDT. And then we have Pear Connect, which is our commercial platform for PDTs. And this is really the place where we see Pear being able to host both our own products as well as the products of other companies. We recently announced an integration with the Epic App Orchard. And what this allows is for the Pear.md clinician dashboard to really be visible within the EMR. And it allows what our health system customers, who are becoming a larger and larger part of our business, to really prescribe for PDTs within the EMR, to monitor their patients within the EMR, and then to qualify for these CPT codes within the EMR. So this is really just one piece of Pear Connect. In addition, we've got things like our Pear.md clinician dashboard, we've got our patient services center, our data infrastructure, and then our relationship with payers. I think you put all of those things together, and we're very bullish on Pear Connect to really serve as the platform for this whole space.
Well, great. Well, we're reaching the end of our time here quite quickly, but let me ask you one final question. From your perspective as management, what do you think the market is missing most about the Pear story, and where's the hidden value?
Yeah, okay, I really do believe that this industry is at an inflection point. And just to bring us full circle here, we've already demonstrated again that software can treat disease. We've demonstrated that we can run compelling randomized clinical trials and real-world data sets. We can get labels from the FDA. We've demonstrated that patients and clinicians utilize the products in the real world. And we've demonstrated that payers will pay. I think in the short term, we're really bullish on, for the first time, having clinical trial data, real-world usability data, and health economic data for all of our commercial products. And we're also really interested in continuing to push the momentum that we've got in states like Massachusetts, Oklahoma, Indiana, Ohio, Kentucky, and Michigan, that we've got with PBMs like OptumRx and Prime Therapeutics, and continuing to push billing and coding, things like the CPTs and the HCPCS, as well as the legislation. And so what I think investors are specifically missing here is the long-term opportunity. And we see an investor opportunity much like the early days of the biotech industry, where you have a new modality that enables hundreds of potential products covering a wide range of medical conditions. I think what investors are missing is that, unlike in biotechnology, we see a unique opportunity for Pear, and it's not just in being the most prolific developer of PDTs, but also the winner-take-most platform for the delivery of these products commercially, both from Pear and from other companies. So suffice to say, we see a big opportunity before us. We know the devil's in the execution, and we're excited with the direction that we're headed.
Well, great. Well, Corey, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thanks, Kay.